Before today's episode, a quick message. This is Mark, and I'm the creator of Lantern Podcasts. I'm really looking to talk with more of our listeners to get a sense of what you honestly like and dislike about these shows. So if you'd like to chat, please shoot me an email at hello@lanternpodcasts.com, and I'd love to speak with each and every one of you. Thanks. Now on today's episode.
Clark's MRI came back clean. That part is great. But the Fever are still activating a hardship exception. Colson and Cunningham are both on the injury report at the same time. And Stephanie White spent Sunday in a front office huddle trying to map out the short-term answer. So, yes, relief. But the roster math still isn't pretty. This is Indiana Fever Daily. I'm Cassidy. Today we're moving from offense on the rise to roster survival. And those are very different jobs.
And I'm Joey. We got a 94-86 road win, a head coach calling the league out over injury reporting, and a front office move we can actually judge. So yeah, let's talk about what it means, not just the vibes.
Scott Agnes and Fieldhouse Files have the hardship exception details, and that is the first real roster move of the season. The big question is whether they find somebody who fits what White wants to run at this pace. Here's Scott Agnes at Fieldhouse Files.
White said the team received positive news in regards to the MRI scans for Sydney Colson's left leg and Sophie Cunningham's right ankle. They are day-to-day, but neither practiced on Sunday. Colson was on a stationary bike and then got shots up after practice, and Cunningham walked in. No crutches, no boot, and no signs of a limp. She even wore slides.
Scott Agnes has the practice report, and the headline is basically two headlines. Colson and Cunningham both got positive MRI news. Both are day-to-day, neither practiced Sunday. And the front office is already working the hardship exception because they were down to 7 healthy players.
7 healthy players. That's not a depth chart, that's a panic button. At that point, the hardship exception isn't optics, it's survival.
And who they bring in matters, because Stephanie White is running a very specific system. Kelly Krauskopf has to find someone who can actually play in that pace, not just somebody to fill a spot.
Cunningham walked in wearing slides. No crutches, no boot, no limp, which is obviously good news. But she also didn't practice. And earlier this week, we were talking about what the rotation looks like when she's fully healthy. So now we at least have the real injury status instead of the theoretical version. And that changes the whole defensive conversation.
This one's from WNBA. The Fever dropped one at Washington, so that 4-2 record we were pointing to this morning just took its first hit of the week. Road loss, Mystics win.
And this is exactly why I want to slow down on the good vibes version of it. 1 road win, 1 road loss. Colson and Cunningham both on the injury report. That's the actual shape of this stretch, not some clean little story.
The box score details are still coming in, but the timing matters. Stephanie White is already huddling with her staff on the next step, and a loss in Washington doesn't make that easier. This one's from Indiana Fever. The game recap is up on the Fever's site, Indiana over Golden State. And now we've got an actual result on the table after a week of talking roster survival.
Sophie Cunningham was out there publicly flagging issues with this team earlier in the week, and then they went to Golden State and got the win. So there's your rematch answer. Whatever she was dealing with, it didn't stop the result.
Worth noting, the article itself is basically just navigation links, so we still don't have the line scores. But the 94-86 road win from the earlier reporting is the number that matters. And winning by 8 on the road while Colson and Cunningham are both on the injury report is the story.
That 94-86 line also feeds straight into what Stephanie White was standing in front of the league office to defend. You don't brush off an injury reporting warning when you're 2-4. She's doing it at 4-2 with a road win already banked, and that changes the weight of it.
This one's from Indiana Fever. 94-86 final on the road. We've spent 2 days asking whether this defense could hold when the offense stopped carrying it, and winning by 8 away from home with Colson and Cunningham both on the injury report gives us a real data point to bring back into that conversation.
And I want to sit with that number for a second because the context matters. This isn't a home blowout. It's a road environment, a shorthanded rotation, and they still held an 8-point margin. That's not nothing.
It moves them to 4-2. The ceiling question is still open, but the floor held up under real pressure. What it still doesn't tell us is whether that holds once the schedule gets harder and the hardship exception signing has had time to settle in.
Right. 4-2 is the record, but the roster situation is still a live wire. The win bought them time. It didn't buy them bodies.
The Athletic, with James Boyd. Stephanie White is sitting on a 4-2 record. Her Coach of the Week case is basically writing itself. And when the league sends a warning about injury reporting, she comes back with, quote, "For what?" That is not a coach grumbling from the bottom of the standings.
And the context matters here. Clark got scratched day of, didn't practice the day before, woke up with soreness. White's not hiding a bruised finger. She's managing a real back situation in real time, and she's basically daring the league to tell her how to do it.
James Boyd at The Athletic has the direct quote, and "for what?" is 2 words that tell you exactly where White thinks her authority ends, which is apparently not at the league office door.
I'll say this, if she were 2-4, that quote lands completely differently. She's earned enough rope right now that it reads like confidence instead of defiance. I just don't want to call it a full win until we see whether the league actually follows through.
Got a fever question, a story idea, or a correction for us? Send it our way at Indiana Fever Daily Fancast at lanternpodcasts.com. We'd love to hear what you're watching heading into the weekend. We've put links to every story from today's show in the notes, so if something caught your ear, you can take a closer look there. That's Indiana Fever Daily Podcast for this Friday, May 29th. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your weekend. This is a Lantern Podcast.